To understand this government's approach to solar farms, one should start by actually rereading their own manifesto, and indeed page 60 of the Labour manifesto, to be more precise. Now, I know it's only a year ago, but in their solemn promise to the British people, what were they saying? Quote, Labour recognises food security is national security. That is why we will champion British farming. Now, indeed, it does seem a long time ago, but we've seen a succession of announcements where it is clear there is no commitment from this government to farming or food security. And indeed, that's part of many other commitments: smash the gangs, or council tax bills won't go up, or energy bills will come down. But on food security and its importance to national security, it is clear that it was a fake promise. And indeed, there's an irony, because at the moment we still have the ongoing COVID inquiry. And I was Chief Secretary at the time of COVID. And what was very clear to me is that at a time of national crisis, value for money changes. There is a competing demand across nations for scarce resources. And at that point, I can assure you, food security will indeed be an issue of national security. And that is why the carelessness of the current government on their manifesto commitment matters so much. Of course,
a brilliant point, but does he also recognise that the way the government set this up, they're guaranteeing 10 to 20% returns on investment on these farms, which is in effect bribing farmers to get away from farming.
Indeed, it is creating an incentive to do the exact opposite of their own manifesto pledge, which indeed is why I started with that point. But let me come on to a second place to look in terms of Labour's approach, and that is to the Cabinet itself. And of course, we can't sit and see firsthand the Cabinet, but what is very clear, and certainly for someone who has had the good fortune to sit in Cabinet, is actually how marginalised the Department of DEFRA has become within the government itself. We see the Prime Minister announce things such as the compulsory purchase of farmland in order to support infrastructure schemes. We see the former Labour leader make a whole raft of decisions in the first few weeks for massive solar farms overriding DEFRA. We see the Deputy Prime Minister riding roughshod over the DEFRA Secretary of State on housing schemes. And we see the Chancellor, it seems, just phoning DEFRA the night before to say that SFI is suddenly being reduced so quickly they've now had to concede in a legal case that their approach was wrong and allow a further 3,000 farm applications to proceed. And that's without the clear commitments when I warned at the election about Labour's farm tax. The DEFRA Secretary said it was complete nonsense. Well, again, we have seen them introduce that and the Treasury ride roughshod there. So we have a department that is completely sidelined within the government and is failing to speak up, not just for food security and farming, but the very commitments that were made in the Labour manifesto itself. And then we see a theme across a range of policy announcements, Madam Deputy Speaker, which shows the instinct, the values, the priorities of this government, which is one which always believes in top-down, know best. It doesn't believe in localism. And why that matters to solar farms is because of the implication around how the delivery of this policy is happening on the ground. We are seeing in areas of the east of England real clustering in certain geographies, often, as my right honourable neighbour would point out, in clusters where the best food production actually sits. We're seeing gaming of the system where the developers bring in consultants to grade the land in ways that sits at odds with historic knowledge of the value of that land. Of course, I can.
I'm delighted to endorse everything my right honourable friend and neighbour has said about national economic resilience. But this point about grading land is critical. To be fair to the government, they have said that grade 1, 2 and 3A land at least should be protected. But the problem is that the solar developers deliberately attempt to distort those distinctions by regrading land using organisations which are part of their own corporations.
He is completely right, and the issue is hiding in plain sight. Indeed, when in government and when I sought to strengthen the protections for farmland, the then Energy Secretary wrote out, and in terms of the changes to guidance that were made, one of those was about bringing forward independent certification for agricultural land classification in terms of soil surveys, because it is well known, we know at a constituency level, that this malpractice is going on not being challenged. But the point is, this is not by accident, this is not an error of delivery, this is by design. And we can see that design in the raft of decisions made by the Energy Secretary in his very first weeks, indeed near to our constituencies, just near to Cambridge. There was an important announcement in terms of a mega farm made against official advice on immediately coming to office. So the reason this matters is also to the wider trust in our politics. We had a clear commitment given by the Labour government to rural communities in its manifesto that is being broken. And I close, conscious of many colleagues wanting to come, with this sort of question to the Labour backbenchers, which is, it may be that number 10 and number 11 have simply decided that with the majority they've got, that a number of their rural MPs they didn't expect to win, they can be sacrificed, they're not essential. And it may be that number 10 and number 11 have made that decision. But it is baffling that there is so much silence, and these MPs are actually voting for measures that are having such a harmful effect in rural constituencies, but is also so short-term that is putting our food security, which indeed matters to our national security, at risk. Yeah.